Okay, thank you, Will. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a meeting of Lichfield District Council's Cabinet. We have a rather short agenda tonight, so let's get cracking on it because of the later hour. I'm going to shuffle the agenda around slightly, and I'm going to start with, well, actually, I'm going to start with apologies for absence. Have we got any? Councillor Cox, thank you, Mark. And I can speak for Councillor Pullen. He's been slightly waylaid and will join us as soon as he can this evening.
Councillor Whitehouse.
Councillor Whitehouse, thank you. Okay, do we have any declarations of interest? No, good. We'll move on. So yeah, as I said, I'm going to slightly switch the agenda and start with item 4, which is the infrastructure funding statement. Over to you, Councillor Farrell.
Yeah, thanks. So this was something that we introduced in its kind of current form last year, and it effectively sets out how we spend community infrastructure levy, SIL money and Section 106 money received and spent during the financial year. And it outlines the strategic infrastructure projects that the council considers eligible for SIL funding applications for this financial year coming. And what we've effectively done on this summary, and the officers have put it together excellently, is we've put together 4 categories going forward for applications for SIL money. And SIL money that comes in from developers is to be spent on infrastructure projects. So the categories going forward for the next financial year that we will judge projects by are healthcare provision, transport infrastructure, sports facilities infrastructure, and education infrastructure. I think these are good broad categories that we would encourage local groups, parishes, and anybody eligible to be spending SIL money to apply for those. Historically, we have funded large projects, for example, Leisure Centre, Burntwood Health Centre, and also smaller projects. And both of those are really important to me because I think, you know, a large sum of money is important to Lichfield District as a whole, but also small sums of money can be really important to local parishes and local groups. So yeah, I think it's a good. I think there's 2 things in here. It's a look back on how money was been spent in the last financial year, and a look forward to what money could be spent out of the SIL money that's given to us by developers. And it's all, of course, goes in hand with the local plan that we've got, Lichfield District 2050 strategy, and it's all about, of course, making Lichfield District a fantastic place to live. Any questions?
On the cabinet table, Councillor Sylvester Hall.
Thanks, Chair. I think for me, this is something I welcome, having historically sat on various committees at Lichfield District, whereby we consider some of those, how we can expand it. We know that there are many worthy projects and initiatives across the entire district that I think in the past would have liked to have done. This certainly gives them the opportunity to go through and submit their applications, and I'll certainly be encouraging various ones in the community that I can do to make sure that they take part of it. One of the questions that I had originally was looking at some of the historical spend, and some of those have been withdrawn, some of them were continued, some of them are still ongoing. It's just to consider when that might be reallocated if we think that it's not going to be delivered, and that's with one eye into what we've just been discussing downstairs in the chamber, and how we might need to make sure that some of those funds are allocated before we potentially don't have that opportunity.
Yeah, this is a really good question. So, funding that has been allocated and not been spent, I know the team are hot on chasing up those people, especially when it's large sums of money. So yeah, anything that's been allocated in the last few years that hasn't been spent, I know that we've contacted them. In fact, recently we sent a letter to one body that hasn't spent the money we've given them, or at least allocated the spend, asking them effectively when they're going to spend it. And it's a case of use it or lose it. If this money isn't spent by the time frame that we give them, we get it back. I mean, this is money that's comes to us from developers who are building on Lichfield District, so it's for the betterment of all of our residents. So yeah, we're really keen to chase anything that's not spent, and of course anything that's given and isn't spent fully, we'll also get back the remainder. I think we're very hot on that, and it's really important to me because, you know, I've spoken to groups that received 5, 10, 15, 20,000 pound in the last round, and it's massive for their communities. It's really important. You know, we always think about the big one, you know, £1 million plus projects. But yeah, the smaller projects are just as important. So yeah, team hot on that, I can assure you.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, James has mine.
Okay, I just have a quick question for Alex. I under section 3.9 to 3.15, we talk about the concept of the infrastructure list, which I understand is the list of the types of infrastructure projects that particular round of SIL money will be available for people to bid for. I like the concept because for me it means that we can focus on what we think is the current need across our district based on what we've done before and where we think we are and what we think is needed. Can you just put a little bit of meat on the bones about how we come up with that infrastructure list and how often we do that? So who's involved in what's the body? It makes in the paper, but just so I can understand it, what's the body involved in coming up with that infrastructure list, and how do we score that in terms of coming up with what the type of infrastructure projects is we're looking for that particular round? I mean,
yeah, no, it's a really good point. And I think it's important also to note that the infrastructure is really key to our residents. So when we put the local plan together, for example, I'm saying we need an infrastructure first, community led approach. What that means is when we're putting together our housing strategy, people really care about the infrastructure they get. So whether it's new schools, doctors, dentists, roads, all of these things matter when we're building communities. So to answer your first bit of your question, the infrastructure categories have been put together in accordance this all goes through overview and scrutiny every year, and also in consultation with the SIG, which is like the group that get together to kind of put this together over the course of the year. So obviously in consultation with myself as well. What we had last year was we kind of tried to formalise the process a little bit more, where we put SIL into different infrastructure categories, so that when we're allocating these projects, we can almost score them on a kind of need by need basis. What the feedback last year, although there was some really good feedback, was that they felt like some of the categories were too narrow, and some things, for example, sports provision, wasn't really getting a look into last year's SIL allocation infrastructure list. So when we put these four together of healthcare, transport, sports facilities and education, I feel like they are things that really matter to our residents, and they're broad enough that most things can fall inside those brackets. So yeah, so to answer your question in a long way, put together by the advisory group that come together on this, working with ONS and Cabinet, and of course myself and the officer team, to work out what are the best and broadest frameworks that people can apply for. And if I go and, SIL is Community Infrastructure Levy, that's what it stands for. So if I go and speak to people in Fazeley, where I represent, and say, what do you think of when you say infrastructure? They'll say roads, they'll say transport, but they'll also think about education. They'll also think about how long it takes them to get to the GP appointment and how difficult it is to get a dentist appointment, and they'll also talk about lack of sports provisions and football pitches. So all of that comes within these frameworks. So I think that's a really important thing for our district, to make sure that the money that we get from developers is spent in the right way.
Thank you, Alex. And I would agree on looking at that particular list for this iteration. I would agree. I can't think of any type of projects that probably wouldn't be covered by the items on the list. I think that makes good sense. Okay, thank you for that. Any more questions on this paper before we wrap up? In that case, then, Councillor Farrell, would you like to just tell us what your recommendations are?
Happy to, yeah. So the three recommendations on this one are to approve the publication of the IFS, which is the Infrastructure Funding Statement in Appendix A, on the website, in line with statutory requirements set out in the Community Infrastructure Levy Amendment England No. 2 Regulation 2019. Also to note the monies received, held and spent from SIL and Section 106 in the financial year 24-25, and finally to approve the proposed infrastructure list, which outlines a short list of strategic projects and or types of projects eligible for SIL funding applications in the forthcoming year.
Excellent. Can I have a show of hands on that from the Cabinet, please? Carried. Thank you. Right then, let's move on let's skip back to agenda item 3, which is local government reorganisation. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail and being intro on this, because what I will say is early this evening at 6 o'clock, we had this council had a full council meeting on this very topic. It was given a very good airing by the entire council, which is good. And the entire council put forward a motion. The entire council voted on the same recommendations in this paper, and the entire council voted to put through the submission of the three unitary model, which is in recommendation 2.1 in this paper. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our officers for all the massive amount of hard work they've done to prepare this paper and get us this far. I know all this is said in full council, but I'm going to repeat it because I think it's really important to say so. I would say, if I'm being really honest, that this is the best of a bad job in my description. Certainly the controlling group of this authority, the Concerted Controlling Group, does not support local government reorganisation in this guise. We strongly feel that the current model that we have, in other words, having a district council that's close to the people, a set of councillors that can have a full-time job and still be members of the council and attend meetings, where people live directly in the area making decisions about planning and other decisions in their area. I'm going to give a couple of examples that this council has achieved, which is things like the new cinema development, the development of the new leisure centre, a number of schemes that we're doing across our district, the pedestrianisation, the Greenway project. I would say it would be a lot harder to get those projects through in a larger unitary council, which is what our government is proposing. However, proposing they are, and not just proposing, they are telling us that we have to go ahead and do this. So it's the correct thing to do for us to come up with a proposal. We have to submit a proposal to the government by the 26th of this month. So this paper comes up with a proposal that we feel is the best option for our district, our residents, and also our neighbouring districts as well. So this essentially involves us being in a unitary of 3 local authorities: East Staffs, Tamworth, and ourselves. And the paper justifies all of the numbers, it justifies the rationale, and we feel this will be a good way forward for us when we have to go down this route. As I say, full councillors already agreed tonight to the recommendations under section 2 to submit the proposal. I'm probably not going to say any more. Do I have any comments or questions, or happy to go to a vote?
Yeah, just a comment I'd make. I'm very disappointed tonight. Disappointed that we're having to make this vote, because local government reorganisation is not wanted by, well, any of my residents, and certainly most of the people I speak to. It's going to cost Lichfield District taxpayers more money. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And it's going to make potentially democracy further away from our residents. I'm also very disappointed that even though we had almost unanimity in the council meeting, one of our councillors, Reform councillor, voted against this. I think he favours the county council proposal, which would effectively put Lichfield, Tamworth, East Staffs, Staffordshire Moorlands in with Stoke. Love the people of Stoke as I do. I don't think we have anything in common with the people of Stoke. I don't think they have anything in common with the people of Lichfield. They're 2 completely separate places. It's over an hour away. Stoke's closer to Manchester than it is to Lichfield. And I don't want planning decisions or any decisions made about Stoke made in Stoke over an hour away. And I think it's a shame that I think most councillors tonight had Lichfield best interests at heart. I don't think all of them did, and I think that is a real shame. I hope that the government looks more favourably on our proposal. You know, we did so much consultation, over 16,000 people were consulted, and 3/4 of them here in Lichfield agree with us that we should have the 2 in the south model and 1 in the north. I think that the proposal to split Staffordshire east and west is preposterous. So I really hope that isn't taken seriously, but I fear it will be, because Staffordshire County Council is a big organisation. And if I was the government looking at that, I would probably look more favourably on the bigger council's proposal than Lichfield. But I really hope that with the backing we've got from South Staffs, we've got backing from Tamworth, it's a joint paper. This is between the three councils. Also, we've got backing from local MPs, local parish councils. I really hope that the government looks at this and thinks about local residents before any potential, what I would consider fantasy money saving, because we're not going to save any money from LGR. That's clear. So let's make the best for our residents. People want accessible services, accessible councillors and accessible democracy. So let's hope that this gets considered. Well, let's hope it gets scrapped firstly, and if that doesn't happen, let's hope this one gets considered, because where I live in Fazeley, this is by far the best proposal. We'd be within 15 minutes of our local council, and you'd know your local councillors.
Thank you, Alex. Janice.
Yeah, so just to build on what you've mentioned there about the quality of the report, I think it is evidence-based, and I think that is absolutely to its credit, but also demonstrating the work that's been put in by the officers. And for me, it's the consultation that's also taken place for us to be able to arrive at the position that we have in full council, but also in cabinet as well this evening. And that consultation is also extended to the fact that we've all just sat through an extraordinary full council meeting whereby every councillor in that room also had the opportunity to debate as well. So I think that when we're making the decision this evening, it is based on quality evidence, engagement from the residents, and we've already made the point about the significant level of engagement and interest that residents have taken, but also us as elected members also having the opportunity to be able to put our opinions across as well. So whilst we are very much, I think, agreed in the fact that is it going to deliver actually where it's intended to? It's going to be replacing 3 tiers with 3 tiers. Is it going to make democracy closer? Certainly since the white paper came out, front and centre in my mind when dealing with each piece of casework has been, would this be any better under a reorganised local government? I know my answer on that one is categorically no. But as I've just said in full council as well, that we know where we are at the moment, and we also need to make the best of what we've got. So the fact that we are responding to what residents have clearly told us, what we've also just voted on in the chamber, that I think that we also have, and certainly I have, we're trying to achieve this evening, and also what we're trying to deliver for residents as we go forward.
Thank you, Janice. I've got Rob next.
Okay. Firstly, thank you very much to the officers who have prepared this document. I know I said it on the floor, but it's worth saying again because this is a truly spectacular document. This is the party that we don't want. I'm not going to repeat what I said earlier on. I heard some very good speeches this evening in defence of this document and in everything that it contains. I also incidentally heard at least one very bad one. I was struck this evening really by what we didn't hear. Because we've heard a number of people speak fulsomely and very impressively about the proposal that we are putting forward. What I expected to hear this evening was a defence of the county position, which frankly for me is inexplicable. And I simply cannot understand how it's been arrived at by anybody with an understanding of how Staffordshire works. I'm truly struck by the silence on that in the chamber downstairs earlier on. And I genuinely am looking forward to hearing what that position is. What struck me though, hearing from members from all but one of the parties this evening, is that there is much more that unites us than divides us, and that is particularly true when it comes to a love for this district and doing the best for its residents and for the businesses across it. This document is very well reasoned. I think it's very well put together. It, to me, stands on its own feet and is fully costed and fully in conformity with what the government are asking us to do. I don't for a second believe that the successor authority will be bankrupt on day one. But this is, for me, I think genuinely the best thing that we could possibly see coming out of this. And I will, of course, be supporting it.
Thank you, Rob. Anybody else?
I'd probably say something, shouldn't I?
Go for it, Doug.
I think what needs to be said is that things probably already been said downstairs in the chamber and no doubt by people here as well. I think what's heartening is to see that cross-party support. I think it's heartening to see that, well, it's heartening to see how much we were talked about at the county as well. I keep on saying that we won't talk about it, but it was heartening to see that because it means that clearly the messaging and the communication of our proposal has cut through and has landed with people. I think for me now, the challenge is to put this to bed once we submit it to government, crack on with what we all thought we were elected to do as a district council, and then be ready to pick this back up when government make their decision in spring, summertime next year. So I think we've got 6 or 7 months of cracking on with our priorities before this is going to come back and become a full-time job for us all again. That's the challenge ahead of us.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Anybody else want to speak?
Yes. I didn't really have much chance to say much in the council chamber because I'm a great believer in not just repeating what everybody else has said, but I think clearly the feedback and the emotion from everyone downstairs sums up where we are with this, and of course the praise for getting us this far to the Chief Exec and the team. Absolutely right. So the report itself, as everyone has commented on, is easy to read. And despite the mockery that we had this morning from the county council, that it's full of pictures and it's almost like a comic, is most upsetting to hear. I personally felt that the pictures in there for clarity were absolutely fine, brilliant, because it brings to life some of the areas that we don't perhaps know very much about, and anyone independent looking at that can now see what some of the villages and some of the other outlying towns actually look like with a snapshot through the photographs. The other thing that was startling to me was the criticism of the lack of depth that the county felt that we had put into this, whereas clearly we've had advisors, we've had KPMG, we've looked at the network of district councils and various other authorities to make sure that it's robust what we've actually put together here. And clearly what this does is to meet all of the 6 criteria that the government have laid out as being vital in a submission. Now, this is unlike the county because what that was concentrated on is just the financials. And it was said over and over again that the submission that the county are doing is not the best for the county, but it meets the financial obligations that the government have set. So rather than concentrate on 6 criteria, then it looks like other submissions have concentrated just on the financial side. And on that side as well, I don't know if anyone has actually looked at this, but the 10 largest unitaries I looked at today, starting from North Yorkshire with a population of about 620,000, is stable but concerns over its amount of debt. And if you then start working your way through those 10, by the time you get to Bournemouth at the bottom, which is classed as insolvent, it actually means that the largest unitary at 620 and the 10th size unitary at 408,000, only 2 of those 10 are classed as stable and okay. 80% of the largest unitaries, which range from 620 down to 408,000, are either failing or in emergency measures. So to have a submission based just on the size of population without giving due regard to the people side of it and the communities and the service, I think is not fitting. And then contrast that with unitaries or metropolitan councils that are about 300 or thereabouts in population, and 50% of those top 10 are either sound or stable. So size alone, as far as the criteria, is not a safe figure just to base on. There are far more things to bear in mind. And on that point, the thing that struck me from our submission was the fact that we're looking at adult care and children's care, social services as a big budget. Something like 70% of the council tax goes into those areas. And I think we're concentrating on early intervention and trying to make sure that we break that cycle of not just dealing with circumstances after they've happened, but try to make an early intervention to make things better at an early stage. So based on all of those things, I think our submission is absolutely right. It keeps in touch with our local communities, and let's remember the amount of rural areas that we have in this part of the world. So for all of those values and beliefs and hitting the criteria, then clearly I think this is our best way forward, and I support and recommend it.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you. Right, in that case, then I'm going to go to the recommendations. So recommendation 2.1, that the Cabinet approves the preferred option, a 3 unitary model to cover Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent, as set out in the full submission document in Appendix 1. 2.2, the Cabinet delegates finalising the full submission document to the leader of the council in consultation with the Chief Executive of the council prior to submitting to government by the 28th of November 2025. Have a show of hands on that, please. That is definitely carried. Thank you very much. On that note, then, I will end tonight's Cabinet